All right, we're going to get started, folks, in just another minute or two. We're waiting for people to join. As we are waiting, figured it's maybe kind of fun to listen to some good music. We will wait for more folks. We have 12 right now, actually 15. It's growing every second here, but we have over 100 people who have registered, so we'll give it another minute or two. So thanks for being on time and early for those of you who are here. Those of you who are watching the recording, enjoy. A little bit more Dolly, and then we'll be off to the races. All right, enough Dolly part for the day. Let's get started. We're a minute after. We've done the little grace period of a typical webinar, give people time to dial in, zoom in. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Karen Pindle, or KP. I'll be your host. We have a packed agenda today, so let me get right into it. And this is being recorded, so if you have to hop out early, no worries. I will send everybody this recording. So let's see here. Oops. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen. There we go. I think I was. All right. For those of you who forgot where you are in the monthly Eloqua user group meeting that we host with Oracle. It's always the third Thursday of the month at the same time, 11 Eastern, 10 Central, et cetera, et cetera. Apologies if it's not a great time. I know around the world, I've had a few people reach out and say, that's too late our time, or I am definitely way asleep at that time, KP, can you do it a different time? So we mostly have North American attendees, so that's why we've chosen this time, just a little background. However, that we're happy to have you who are here that are dialing in or listening in late your time. Definitely appreciate it. You know, you're going an extra mile when you're doing that. So again, I'm KP. I work for Sojourn Solutions. We're an Oracle partner. We focus on helping our customers with that Eloqua thing we're going to talk a lot about today, but more specifically helping them achieve their goals, their marketing goals, oftentimes, sometimes sales or IT goals, but nonetheless, all about actually getting stuff done, getting results and saving time and money. But anyway, my background is I've spent the last 18 years working. I spent the first 2 years in sales at a company called Under Armour, which I thought was car cleaning solution when I interviewed with the company. I didn't realize it was clothing or apparel at the time. Now they do a whole bunch more. But anyway, I switched over to marketing 2 years later and interviewed with a company for that marketing job and had to ask them to say Eloqua a few times because I didn't know what the woman was saying or talking about. I didn't know what Eloqua was. So I ended up doing 4 years of marketing, lots of different things, Eloqua included, and consulted for the last 12 plus years on Eloqua, a few other platforms and overall marketing strategies. And thankfully, I'm happy to host this, share with you guys stuff that I've learned over the years that there's always in those first few years when you use a platform like Eloqua, there's things that you wish you had known earlier on. And the goal here is to help you learn those things as quickly as possible, whether you're in your first few months using Eloqua or you're in your 12th year, like some of us here are. So anyway, we have a great agenda for you today. I'm excited about it. We do usually every month, but this is super applicable today with 2 people that are excellent presenters as well. So the first thing is I'm going to quickly go through some reminders to help you guys stay in the know. We always try to highlight something that's upcoming that you just would be, as an Eloqua user, it would be helpful to know about. The next topic will be Tamina Christensen from the Oracle CX Marketing, was Oracle Marketing Cloud. Now it's Oracle CX Marketing. She's a director of product management there. She's going to go through the overview of the 21B release, the latest release of Eloqua. And then we're going to switch over to an actual marketer, Eloqua user. Jen Kloss is going to present to us about how they have done more with less, mainly with integration. She's got an awesome presentation. I've already seen it, obviously, and I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. And then if there's time for it, I'll do some spring cleaning tips. I kind of stole the term last year from somebody I heard in an Eloqua user group. I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to Marie Kondo your Eloqua instance. If you don't know who Marie Kondo is, you can Google it right now. Marie, and then her last name is Kondo. She's basically a celebrity for helping people like go into their home and clean up their house, organize their house. So she has a whole method to it, and it's pretty cool. And you can definitely apply a lot of those tips to Eloqua and any other MarTech that you're trying to keep organized and get the best value from. So last but not least, we'll open it up for tips or questions. Of course, you guys, if you've been here before, you know, if this is your first time, welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or the Q&A. Ideally, the Q&A of Zoom, because it makes it way easier for us as hosts to answer your questions and not miss them. But inevitably, somebody always puts a question in the chat, so that's fine. We won't ignore it. If we don't get to your question, fear not, we will reach out to you. I am actually going to email everybody from our Eloqua instance later today with the recording, and it does a direct reply to me. So if you have any questions, you can let me know. If I don't know the answer, I'll ask our team. And the last thing is that this is being recorded, so we're going to try not to swear, you know, no nudity, things like that. So moving on, the relevant reminders, there's only a few for today. The big one is all about the Eloqua 21B release. If you ever wondered how they named the releases, so this is 2021, the year, so hence 21. Next year it'll be 22 releases. And then A is for Q1, so calendar year is what we're going by. So January, February, March, that release was 21A. Now we're in the April, May, June timeframe. So this is the 21B release. The next one will be 21C. The last one will be 21D. So, so some of you already have this latest release and the features and the fixes in it in your Eloqua Live now. So as you can see here by the calendar of when the release is going out, pods 1, 2, and 7 had it done last Friday. And then pods 3, 4, and 6 will have the release done tomorrow. I don't know where pod 5 is. I looked at this earlier and I was like, where's pod 5? I don't know, maybe there's not a pod 5 anymore, but anyway, or somebody forgot to, they skipped over number 5. Maybe they don't like it. Anyway.
Aaron, I can jump in on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
we actually joke a lot about the mysterious pod 5. Whenever there's something there, like, oh yeah, that's on pod 5. Can't you find it? And I believe pod 5 was supposed to be reserved for a new geographic area, and then it's never happened. But so now pod 5 is kind of, like Area 51 in Nevada, like it's just this ethereal place. So there's a lot of jokes that we have internally around pod 5 too. So you didn't miss anything. Okay. Something happened 10 plus years ago that now there's no pod 5.
That makes sense. Thank you. Straight from the source, you guys. So thank you, Tamina. I kind of wondered, I'm like, maybe they just forgot to put it in this table. Maybe somebody deleted the row by accident. I don't know, but now we know there isn't a pod 5 today. Maybe there will be one day, who knows? So another tip is, I get asked by people, especially, it's mostly people who are newer to Eloqua, but I think this applies to people, even if you're like in your 5th year plus of using Eloqua, we can always learn something. First of all, I recommend the Help Center. Seems kind of obvious, but there are videos in the Help Center. The documentation is so much better, geez, than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And whoever is working on that at Oracle is doing a kick-ass job. Well, I can't swear on camera, doing a really good job at it. So the videos there, and I've highlighted that in that link, you can even just go to the Help Center and click video, and you'll get some great videos specific to different parts of the platform that you're trying to learn. And then another tip with training is there are some free options for training at Oracle University. People normally think, well, don't I have to pay Oracle for a subscription to Oracle University to take courses? Well, yes, for the more lengthy courses, but there is the Eloqua Explorer courses. It's about an hour combined. It's not a ton, but it's something to get your feet wet and to start to learn more about Eloqua terminology and what it can do, and to share with others in your company as well if you need to. Last but not least, if you missed a past Eloqua user group meeting, if you ever hear us reference something from a past Eloqua user group meeting, We put all the recordings on our website. Thankfully, we've got those there now. It's on the resources page of the Sojourn website. I think I've had too much coffee and I'm trying to talk too fast. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to Tamina, again, from the Oracle CX Marketing Product Management team, to present to us some of the cool stuff happening with the latest release that, again, some of you already have and some of you will get tomorrow. So Tamina, the floor is yours.
Like, I saw that picture, I'm like, you stole that picture from somewhere else.
I think LinkedIn or a past presentation, maybe.
Probably a past presentation, because I was looking at that picture. I'm like, where'd she get that one? Somebody must have given it to her. But I'm glad I could be here today with everybody. I did put in the Explorer link in the chat. I actually did the Explorer course just because I wanted to see what it was like. And it was just a nice top of the mind refresher. Make sure I still knew my stuff, because that's how it was for me. But we've had some interns also take it. It was a great way for them to kick off things. The other element I want to highlight is, you mentioned the videos. We've even released 2 new videos this week, one being around the 2 things that I'll talk a little bit about today, one of them being around form spam protection and another being around the AI, the intelligence features that we've recently launched. So those, we are constantly trying to create these new 3 to 5 minute videos so that our customers are aware of what's happening and get a high level overview. Let me jump in. I'm going to be highlighting some of the things coming in our 21B release. So safe harbor, just because things are being released, because it is coming. Half of you have already gotten it. The other half will be getting it. Timing shouldn't change. We're that close. I'm glad that Karen highlighted this as well, but just highlighting some information here. If people want to get a sense of things, pods 1 and 2 are housed in our Canada data center. Pod 7's in Australia data center. Pods 3 and 4 are in our US data center, and pod 6 is in our EMEA data center. So some of pods 3 and 4 and pods 1 and 2 will always be released together because of local data centers. One thing, if you're not sure which pod you are on, I remember when I first started as an Eloqua customer, I could not figure out which pod I was on, but it's in the URL when you log in, and it'll tell you which pod you're in. And we've already had that fun discussion of where the infamous pod 5 is, somewhere in Area 51. We do post information to our release resource center, including every quarter we post even a roadmap recording that some people may not realize in our insiders. Now, this is the release resource center, but we do have an insiders page that also posts videos. If you are not signed up and you want to get these emails, just go to bit.ly/Eloqua release and you can sign up. We do have other supplemental resources too that, you know, walk through these things in detail, give you a little bit more information. And once again, here's a little quick link for you with bit.ly ELQ readiness. And these are publicly available. And we do a summary a few weeks before the release, and then all the details become published on the release date. And since some of the pods have already gotten it, this is already fully published. We also have different product notices. And so I think it's important to highlight that these product notices come out. And if you are able to subscribe to getting updates on that page, these are published on our insiders page. So that's where you can find that. One of them that's new, I'll talk about in some of the things that are coming up. Most of our product notices are related to APIs because that's where some of the bigger changes come. But we do have some changes coming in other areas as well. But an important area to follow. If any of you have Oracle Content Marketing, that was also used to be known as Compendium. We are end of lifing that. That includes all the apps that came with it. So if you are using like the basic marketing calendar, the dynamic cloud content app, those were all part of the Compendium feature. We are investing in Oracle's content management, also known as Oracle Content and Experience. And that is an internal CDN DAM type resource that we're going to be investing in a lot more. So look for more information as that comes into play. Also, that reminded me, though I am part of what's called CX Marketing Group, the product is still known as Eloqua. So we have not changed that name. Even in our official branding guidelines, it's Oracle Eloqua. So we do have that, and we are holding on fast to the Eloqua name. So things that are coming in 21B. First off is form spam protection. So form spam protection, first off, is in control availability. It will be off by default, and I'll explain why. But it is something that after you get this, you can call support and you will be able to request access to this. And then each form will have the ability to turn on the form spam protection. I had a customer the other day ask me why you wouldn't default it as on. And the reason being is some of our customers are using this for an internal thing. They feel confident, they're fine. Other people have integrated forms with CAPTCHA or have other JavaScript type validation, and we don't want to interfere what's happening there. Others are using forms behind a secure portal, and so they've already had to log in. So we want people to have that choice and that ability of what they're turning on and knowing how I don't want to use the word side effects, but the downstream reactions of what could happen. So in this CA, there are a few features coming with it. One is there will be a action permission to control the feature access. So only certain security groups would be able to have the ability to turn this off and on. All users will be able to see whether this is on or off, but only the action permission will allow you to control that feature. So in one sense, it'll be read-only or actionable. The way this is working is we're doing some timestamp validation. There's multiple pieces happening on this. One of those is we validate how quickly that form is being submitted. So if we see that submit over and over and over again, being able to mark that as spam. We also have a hidden honeypot field that we do validation checks on. We also have extended this to support this on blind form submission links using some validation. When you go to our documentation to look at information on how to set this up and configure it, you will be sent to a support knowledge base document because, one, we don't want how we do everything to be exposed to hackers because hackers are constantly, and form spammers are constantly getting smarter. So going to the knowledge base will require you to authenticate in and be able to see some of that information. One of the key things to note, and this is why this is in controlled availability, is we want to make sure every marketer understands this, is if you have this integrated with an external web page, there is some code that you would need to update to enable this to work correctly. And so that's one thing that you'll see in the knowledge base article housed on support is what those changes need to be. And that's another reason why this hasn't just been generally released, is we want to make sure that you know what information you need to update that externally hosted form type integration. One final note is this, you cannot see the submissions that have been marked as spam currently in the UI. It's only available via the API, where you would be able to see all those submissions that were marked as spam. That's one of the key features that we're going to implement before making this fully GA, is to have that better user experience. But it was important for us to get this out to our customers. We've had a lot of customers that have been eager for this feature. And so we have this in a CA, letting people know some of the limitations for when, and one of those being you can pull the form submissions via API, but not yet in the UI. Eventually we'll get it there in the UI. So that is something that's coming with the 21B release. And I'll just look at all the questions after we're done. So if you have questions about things, I'll take a look at them after we're done with this. Another thing that we are investing in is supporting multiple brands. And I want to be very clear what multiple brands are. So, and once again, multiple brands in a single Eloqua instance. If you have enterprise and you have brands spread from different instances, I actually think that's the better way to go. But we do have some customers that, due to the nature of their business, they have a couple of brands in one install. So a brand would be, for example, Old Navy, Gap, Banana Republic. They are all owned by the same parent company, but they're 3 distinct brands. Saying, oh, I'm going to send from Oracle, but I want it to be eloqua.oracle.com or responses.oracle.com or infinity.oracle.com. Those are not different brands. The brand is still Oracle, and we have different product lines. So you need to think about brands being very single, distinct, separate brands. So you can have access to being able to manage some of these brands. You would get a dedicated IP for each brand, which includes that dedicated bounce back address. And then you would have image and application domains that you would need to secure that could match with those brands. And then you would have that single dedicated IP that you can send from within one install. This has actually been a very big hit with a lot of our smaller customers, our small businesses that have a couple of different brands. They have some lower sending volumes, but yet it still's better. It's a good support on a dedicated IP. This does require the premium branding and configuration SKU. It's a multi-brand SKU. So there's a cost to supporting this. But I believe the cost of the SKU is, I think it's around $15K. I got to safe harbor that because I'm not on the sales side, so I don't know the latest pricing, but that's a way to be able to support multiple brands in a single install. Another thing that we have is around date filtering update. And we have made some changes with how we're doing date filtering. And I'm going to put a link in the chat when I'm done with the presentation about an FAQ around this, because there's a lot of details around it. Essentially, when this is enabled for your instance, first off, it cannot be disabled. It's a one-way street. You either have it off or you have it on. Existing customers have the default off. Net new customers, so if you decided to spin up a new instance, it would automatically have it on. And essentially what this does is it provides accurate results for that local user. So if you have users across different areas of the world, and for example, let's say I was in Australia and I evaluated the segment on like a date, it is going to be run by that user's local time. So by the local user. If somebody, and this is where I believe I got all the details right, that's why I want to get the FAQ out for people. If I came in from North America, made some changes and click save, it would actually reevaluate based on me, that local user who made the changes and made that saving. So it is going to be very beneficial for those who are having, if you're in Australia, sending local campaigns in Australia, but you have different team members doing local campaigns in the US, you're going to have that better date filtering coordination. Once again, that's why I'm going to send the FAQ over. So those who are interested in enabling this can have some of those questions answered before. If everything is working for you the way you need it to, my recommendation is probably don't change things. If it isn't broke for you, this became very problematic for our customers when they had multiple regions going on. We've made some slight improvements in our advanced intelligence area. For example, in the fatigue analysis dashboard, some things were they were displaying funny, so we updated how we displayed the data. So basically normalize that y-axis for everything. We also added some information on the fatigue analysis showing when things were last refreshed, wanting to highlight it automatically updates every 2 weeks using 6 months of data. So now you can easily see when things have been refreshed and understand the model. By the way, this is for the overall model, not just the analysis dashboard, but being able to see the refresh date for the model. So the model does update automatically every 2 weeks to understand the fatigue. We've also added information around the account engagement. So there's a new chart summarizing key data points and different activities. And then you can be able to drill down to account performance for one of those accounts that show up on that overall engagement. So if you clicked on that engagement or that account, you could then drill into, for example, that account. And then with some of the dashboards and analytics, we've just done some slight enhancements, improvements. For example, translating all of the catalog. We're linking from the STO chart into Insight. So a lot of little small updates that have come within the analytics area, but then should bring some quick wins for our customers on how they're accessing this data and this information. We implemented archiving for emails, but there were some nuances that happened within sales tools. So now sales tools will no longer have access to be able, or no longer be able to send archived emails. Some of our salespeople had a link to a template, and so they could just kind of bypass that going right to the template link. But now we have disabled that. So if the marketing team has chosen to archive the email, it's not available for sales as well. We've also added some information around usage overview reports. One of those includes that displaying the number of enabled and disabled users. So that disabled users is what has come into play so that you have a better understanding of what's coming in with these total user counts. We've also done some information into our APIs, and I highly recommend going to the change log. I can also send that link into there, especially if you're interested in all the changelog things for the APIs. One of them, oftentimes there's stuck records that happen on the campaign. So we're trying to get more detailed information and better understanding to our customers on those detailed status messages. So those will now be available via the API so that you can see that status message. We also have changed some or added some things around with the batch form submission detail endpoint. This is the idea of we're changing the depth to minimal for batch form submissions. This is just creating that in the scenario that like the retrieve batch form submission details endpoint is being used to pull for status, the depth should be minimal. So the default is being set to match that use case and require complete depth to be specified when needed. So it's always recommended to use that callback URL to be notified of the status. If polling is needed, the new default depth and minimum should always be used. So there's also a product notice. This is one of the product notices that was highlighted. Within the app developer framework, campaign ID is being added as a URL template parameter to the content service landing page notify URL. So this campaign ID will be populated with the Eloqua campaign ID query parameter. Once again, this is highlighted in the developer changelog. 4 other API updates. Email sent from the Outlook plugin will now be set to Outlook plugin email type in the activity report. So you're going to be able to see which of those emails were sent from that Outlook plugin. We have resolved an issue with the bulk API dependency. Down here with the custom object data endpoint, making an update there, and then validation for error added to custom object endpoint. So once again, small little changes that should hopefully help those working with our APIs to have some better feedback information. So, see that developer changelog. One of the things that we spent a significant effort on is actually our asynchronous API. For form processing. In the past, everything used to be synchronous, and that meant that every step needed to execute, and that meant that a response is not returned until form processing completes. But with this asynchronous form processing via API, and by the way, this is fully coming in 21C. We're just announcing it now because we need to give people notice before we make changes. And we wanted to highlight this. But this form processing API will be released for the create form data for a single form endpoint. This is available for early preview with this release. So and 21C is when it's going to be released. Oh, this should say 21B preview. But it's going to give system stability, consistent, faster response time, no loss of data with large volumes. So we have about 50% of our form submissions that come through Eloqua come through the API. And I would say 80% of those that come via the API come through the Form Submit app. So those who are using the Form Submit app, we have already made all the backend changes to move to this asynchronous form processing API. So that is the hope that that Form Submit app will now run in a more stable, reliable way, which we've actually seen performance benefits around this. So those who may be saying, why is all this time? It's API, I don't understand why this would be relevant to me. If you're using the Form Submit app, this is actually now the underlying technology that's running that for a stable way. Also, don't forget about just recent enhancements that we've created and released in different releases, just wanting to highlight that. And once again, become a marketing expert. You know, there are the Explore, but there are actually new expert modules that have come up. So if you have an education pass, please use that to become experts in other areas. And with that, I am done. And I took a little bit longer than I thought I would, but let me look at some of.
There's only one quick question. This is probably a lot of people thinking this. For the account engagement analytics, is there an ability, or will there be an ability to filter out your own company? Like Sojourn might be a lead for somebody else, but not for Sojourn when we're looking at that type of a dashboard.
I'll need to look into that because I didn't realize that your own company was actually showing up, because my assumption would have been you should be able to exclude it. So I'll look into that. I don't know for sure. Okay.
Thank you, Tamina. As always, thorough, helpful. You make it come down to like real life, what the new feature is or the fix is applying to. So much appreciated. Without further ado, now I'm going to introduce you guys to Jen Klosh. He works for the Advisor Group. She's based out of Arizona in the United States. And she's going to talk to us about some cool stuff they've done, as it says here, to leverage integrations to do more with less. So Jen, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much for introducing me, Karen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. As Karen said, I am the Demand Generation Marketing Manager at Advisor Group. Just a little bit of background information that'll help you contextually understand what I'm about to discuss today. Advisor Group is the largest network of independent wealth management firms in the United States. Basically, what that means is our customer base consists of independent financial professionals. So people you would hear referred to as a financial advisor, a certified financial planner. We are a B2B organization that provides back office support services to all of those independent financial professionals so that they can do what they do best, which is talk to their clients and help their clients plan out their futures and realize their goals. I'll get a little bit more into that in a minute, but I have been an Eloqua user for 3 years now this month, and I'm a certified Eloqua expert and a campaign execution expert. I really recommend the expert certifications on Oracle University that Tamina mentioned a minute ago. So I got into this a little bit already, but Advisor Group is a parent company that was over 4 different wealth management firms. We're going to be traveling a little bit back in time this morning to 2019, which is really when I started to implement a lot of the work that I'm going to share with you today. We are a private equity owned company. We're owned by Reverence Capital Partners. And then we directly service these 4 firms, but now 6, as I'll discuss towards the end of our presentation today. And then all of our financial professionals are affiliated with these firms. This is just a selection of the different services and solutions that we offer our financial professionals to give you an idea of what we do. I won't spend too much time on this slide because I know most of us here are marketers. And this is our marketing technology stack, at least as of 2019. This is the stack that we're going to discuss today. So Salesforce is our CRM, and we currently have a one-way integration set up where our existing financial professional data, existing customer data is pushed over into Eloqua, where we deploy all of our marketing communications, corporate communications from. And Eloqua is our source of truth for all of our engagement data across all of our channels. And then down below here are the various different softwares and channels that we use for advertising. Ultimately, as you'll see today, everything goes back to Eloqua. Eloqua is really the core of our marketing technology stack. So I'm going to start out this presentation by talking about our challenges. And I think that what I'm going to talk about is probably something that's relatable for a lot of people here, especially if you've ever been a one-person marketing automation shop or marketing ops shop in your organization. And then I'm going to share with you how we solve these problems. We were an extremely small team with limited resources. So when I started at Advisor Group 3 years ago, it was my manager, Eric Hansen, who oversees all of our digital marketing and creative initiatives. And then it was me working in Eloqua. And then I had another teammate who was handling all of our corporate communications to our existing customers in Eloqua. And then I had one strategic marketing manager who did a lot of our content development. But we really only had 2 people who were actively working in Eloqua on a day-to-day basis. My manager is actually a really long-time Eloqua customer and taught me a lot about Eloqua, but since he's at the senior vice president level now, he's not in the trenches working in Eloqua every single day. And we had these 4 brands that all wanted equal representation from us. And then under those 4 brands, we had 13 salespeople who were all coming to us all the time with requests for individual personalized campaigns that they wanted to run to their territories for their initiatives. So we had this idea that we would come up with these regional multi-channel recruiting campaigns, kind of like a one-size-fits-all campaign-in-a-box solution. We would still have to brand it 4 ways. Each of our firms wanted campaigns to actually be sent from them, not our parent company, Advisor Group. And then we would have to personalize the assets within those campaigns to be sent on behalf of each sales rep. And we envisioned this campaign as being like a seamless cross-channel experience, similar to what a lot of us are used to experiencing now as customers of big companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix. We were all really, really impressed by marketing initiatives run by big, traditionally B2C organizations like that. And we just said, we want to do that without admittedly doing very much research into how to make that happen. So we just started doing it. We started running ads on Facebook and LinkedIn, lead generation ads, and downloading lists of leads and re-uploading them to Eloqua, and then deploying communications to those people. And we found out very quickly that this wasn't good for us or our customers, because our customers weren't getting that seamless, personalized cross-channel experience that we were striving for in real time. There were delays between their experiences where they would take action. For example, they'd register for a webinar that we were advertising on LinkedIn or Facebook, but then someone from our team would have to manually download that lead list, upload it to Eloqua. We would actually go into Zoom and manually register people for our webinars. And then, so if somebody registered for that webinar from an ad on a Saturday, they might not actually be officially registered by us until Monday, when we were back in the office and we were working that week. So that really wasn't a great experience for our customers. They probably forgot, honestly, that they even registered for a webinar by the time that they were getting that confirmation email from Zoom. And they weren't receiving personalized communications based on the actions that they took either. We weren't excluding people who had already registered for the webinar from receiving further invites for the webinar, which as a marketer, I hate that experience. I don't want to receive invites for a webinar or event that I already registered for. It just feels really like the company isn't paying attention, not personalizing things from my experience. And then finally, our customers weren't progressing through our campaigns smoothly just because of this friction, because of all of these manual processes that we had in place to keep them moving through the campaign. It was also a huge time investment, as you can imagine. I have some numbers up on the screen just to show you the sheer number of assets that were required to execute just one of these quarterly campaigns, because we were branding everything for 4 different brands, and then we had the personalization element for the 13 salespeople. And because of the nature of our business and our brands, we're in the financial services space. So we all have different compliance disclosures that have to be at the bottom of our emails, and our firms aren't okay with just using a general advisory disclosure that mentions their sister firms. They want the one that's only their firm. And we had to brand the landing pages. We were running different webinars for each firm, as you can see on the slide. Todd Folks, our Senior Vice President of Succession and Acquisition, God love him, he's a very kind man. He would present the same webinar 4 times, just branded different ways for different firms. So it really was a huge list for our team. And here are some numbers about just the sheer amount of production hours that went into setting up one of these campaigns. As you can see, 104 hours alone on email production. It was absolutely huge, and that included QAing, having to test the links in every single email, because every brand had their own landing pages, their own webinar registration pages. We were doing all that ad setup manually and manually registering people for Zoom webinars. It was not sustainable or scalable. I was not as cool as the "this is fine" dog is in this meme right here. I will be completely honest and transparent with you. There was a day, I will never forget it. It was probably the worst day I've ever had at work. In June 2019, when I launched one of these campaigns, and it was the first time I was launching it for all 4 brands at the same time. And I had previously only done it for 2. And I was so stressed out. I had so many different people coming to me and asking me for things or criticizing the way that I had done things, that I just got up from my desk. I said, I need a break. And I walked down 21 flights of stairs in our skyscraper where we work in downtown Phoenix, crying. And I sat outside in the courtyard crying for an hour before I calmed down enough to come back into the office. And it was genuinely the only time that I had ever not wanted to come to work at this job. So when I came back upstairs, my boss, Eric Hansen, who I have a really great relationship with, sat me down and we just talked about it. And we assessed the pros and cons of the situation and what our options were. It was going to be really hard for us to back these campaigns, scale them back, because sales had already bought into them. We'd already made this promise to people. We didn't want to lose their confidence. And we were also starting to see some really good results. We were seeing good results when we were running them for 2 brands. Now we were running them for 4, so the potential was even greater. And we'd only really completed 1 quarter of campaigns like this. So we came to the conclusion that we had to find ways to automate this, and we had to find ways to do the same or potentially more, because people were probably going to ask us to do more with less work, because we weren't going to get more people on our team. And even if we did, it would take them a while take us a while to train them in Eloqua and get them to the point that I was at. So this is where our use of integrations and automations comes in. We connected 4 platforms with 3 new integrations: Taxi for email, LinkedIn Campaign Manager, and Zoom. Taxi for email is actually a really great third-party software that integrates with Eloqua, and it is designed specifically for complex versioning cases like my company has. If any of you work for brands that operate globally and you have to deal with things like versioning emails for different languages, different countries, and then also you're personalizing for different customer segments, this is the type of solution that is for you. I'll get into a little bit more about how it works and how we use it in a minute here, but the bottom line is being able to automate the versioning of our emails ended up saving us about 69 hours in production time every quarter. Then we integrated with LinkedIn Campaign Manager so we could automate that whole process of adding people who filled out a lead gen form on LinkedIn. We could automate adding them into Eloqua and register them for webinars via the Zoom app, which is on here. So between the LinkedIn and Zoom integrations that we set up, we were saving another about 10 hours a quarter. So saving in total about 79 hours of production time every quarter. With Taxi, we were really able to take that pain that I had with versioning emails out of the process. So the way that this works is you create what's called a version set in Taxi. And that tells Taxi when it's automating which parts of the email need to change for every version. So I can tell Taxi, okay, when I'm making the FSC version of this email, I need you to change the hero background color to navy and the CTA color to gold. And it will just automatically do that when I create a new email in the software with the version set applied. And then you have what's called a parent version in the software, where if you have things that are common to every email that's getting versions, like maybe you're using the same headline and you're advertising a webinar, you can just type that in on the parent version and it'll flow down to all of the child versions in your version set. And those child versions are automatically created for you based on what you define in the version set. And then say you have a specific change, like maybe the FSC version of the email needs to link to the FSC Zoom webinar registration page or something like that. You can go into that child version and you can make that edit, but it won't affect any of your other versions. Then when you're all done, you can push them over to Eloqua via the API, and the API actually creates individual email assets for you in Eloqua, which at least for my team's case, we really needed the reporting capabilities of being able to report very robustly on each individual email version rather than using dynamic content or something like that. So as I mentioned earlier, you can use a software like this if you're working with different languages, different personalizations for different customer segments. It's just a really good solution for if your use case is too complex for dynamic content. So, as I mentioned earlier, we also integrated LinkedIn Campaign Manager and Zoom with Eloqua, and Eloqua really acts as the intermediary between those two platforms in a really great way. So we're able to set up LinkedIn lead gen form ads with a custom audience of our prospects from Eloqua, then serve the prospects those ads. And the prospects can submit a lead gen form from the ad without ever leaving the platform, which is, in our case, we've seen huge boosts in registration for webinars, or now we're using this for gated assets even as part of our current campaign. We see so many more form submissions allowing people to submit the form natively within LinkedIn than if we're driving to a landing page with another form on that landing page. We were just seeing really high form abandonment rates and bounce rates when we were doing that. So this has been a game changer for us. After the prospects submit that form from the ad, they're added to an Eloqua campaign canvas. where we can pull over the cloud action step for the Zoom app, and then the prospects can just be automatically registered for the webinar on the Eloqua campaign canvas. They don't ever have to go to a Zoom registration page. Our team doesn't have to manually register them. And then they get those personalized, relevant webinar follow-up emails in real time. And they don't continue to get things like events for webinars that they already registered for. And you can use the same process with Facebook lead ads, actually, which I currently do. And then you could use this with an Eloqua landing page and a form if you wanted to have people register for your webinar or your event on an Eloqua landing page instead of using a Zoom registration page. So here's a screenshot of what my Eloqua campaign canvas looks like that does this. So you would have a feeder up here at the top from the LinkedIn Campaign Manager app, or if you were sending people emails from a segment, you could have the segment on the campaign too. But you've got these Zoom decision steps in here that are evaluating whether the contact is registered for the webinar and then excluding them from subsequent emails based on registration status. Here's another example of that. So you're really giving your prospects that seamless cross-channel experience that they've come to expect in real time. And you're saving your team a ton of time, as you saw in my case, and just becoming a lot more efficient. Please enjoy this DJ Khaled reference from my graphic designer, CJ. So what were we able to accomplish with all of this? Well, we didn't abandon the campaigns like we talked about when I walked down 21 flights of stairs crying and considered quitting my job. We were able to scale them from 4 campaigns in Q1 of 2019 to 47 over the course of the year, purely because of these new integrations that we introduced to our Eloqua instance and automating a lot of parts of our campaign process. Our prospects were able to register for webinars in whatever their chosen channel was. We were able to take advantage of pre-populated forms on Eloqua or LinkedIn because you can pre-fill with someone's profile information, which makes it even easier for them. We reduced the number of campaign canvases that were necessary to execute a quarter of campaigns by 61%. And we were able to decrease the average launch time of a campaign from 3 months to 6 weeks. So a lot of really huge wins for our team here. And we were still only operating as about a 3-4 person team, depending on the capacity that my colleague had to help me out. We were able to also substantially increase our revenue. So we went from not having an established nurture program at all. We were a fairly new marketing organization that had to start from scratch, basically, after we separated from AIG a few years ago. We went from having no nurture list to having about 40,000 people on our nurture list, with about half of them being really engaged with our content, and $17 million in pipeline revenue for our sales team. Where are we now? What's next? So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we're actually a lot bigger now. We merged with Ladenburg Thalmann in February of 2020. So now we're supporting 6 different wealth management firm brands instead of 4, which really wouldn't be possible without these streamlined processes that we've developed. We've also implemented 2 custom REST APIs for 2 different proprietary apps that we have, so that we're able to send all of those app notification emails out through Eloqua now, whereas before our developers were actually using Mailgun, and we were having a lot of deliverability issues with Mailgun due to IP addresses being shared. And then we had all of that customer data siloed, and we couldn't factor it into things like lead scoring for retention, or even see how our communications were performing so that we could optimize them. I implemented a lead scoring model this year that leverages data from all these different integrations. So we're going to actually repurpose that for a retention lead scoring model as well. And we're also looking at incorporating direct mail into more of these cross-channel experiences so that our customers see us everywhere. So this last part here, I wanted to provide you with some resources to help you get started with integrations if you've never done this before. If you'd like to, I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'd be happy to share my presentation with anybody who's interested. I know KP said we won't be sending out the slides from the main user group, but I've got a lot of really great resources in here that I personally used and vetted along my journey learning how to do this. And there's links in here to specific websites and stuff. I put together this step-by-step guide based on Oracle Help Center on how you can get started. And I have some course recommendations for courses that I've taken in here too. There's some free and some paid ones. Like was mentioned earlier, Oracle University does cost money, but if you can get your company to pay for it for you, I really recommend it. I renew my certification every year and I always learn something new. I personally use the App Cloud class and then the APIs for Modern Marketers class to learn more about integrations in Eloqua. And then there's also a ton of free resources that you can use. I absolutely love on Oracle Cloud Marketplace, there's this related documents section on each different app's page where they have user guides with step-by-step instructions. A lot of times there's screenshots, there's videos that show you how to set up the app. And then they have these really cool solution sheets that actually have ideas for how you can use the different apps to address bottlenecks that you have in your process and how you can improve them with APIs. And then there's also, of course, the Help Center itself and Topliners as well. There's a lot of really great information on there about new app releases and app updates. And then outside of Eloqua, there's also really great free professional communities online that I'm not sure if you're aware of. I personally really love Women of Email and the Email Geek Slack community. There are people in there from, I think they're up to over 7,000 brands worldwide. And there's just absolutely brilliant people. And you can go in there and you can ask a question and people are more than happy to help you with no expectation of anything in return. It's really a wonderful community. I just want to finish by saying you can learn to do this. If you want to, you can pretend I'm your own little personal Leslie Knope on your shoulder cheering you on. I have a degree in English literature. I am not an IT person, and I learned how to do all of this out of spite. I had a software engineering manager tell me when I was asking him for help setting up a CRM integration at my first company that no one cares about marketing outside of marketing. So I hope none of you ever experience something like that from IT or anyone else in your career, but I am living proof that if you are stubborn enough, you can learn how to do it. So yeah, thank you so much.
Jen, thank you. That is awesome. And I don't think it's stubborn. I think it's strength, really, that you're talking about, like in persistence, holding yourself accountable. You know, sometimes like we all know in our personal and professional lives, it definitely falls over both areas where some of our greatest challenges that bring us to our knees, bring us to tears. Maybe if you're not a crier, it brings you to want to punch a pillow, or hopefully not a person or anything. But, you know, those are the things I know in my own life, both professionally and personally, that I've grown the most. I've actually had to face something, change it about myself, or like in this case, you actually are using the automation and like the heck out of the automation in this marketing automation thing that Eloqua is. And it's not always easy to do, but when we put our minds to it, like thank you for sharing all the follow-up details as well, like how to get here. There was a question about how long it took you guys to get the integrations in place, like with LinkedIn, leads, ads, things like that. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I procrastinated it for, I want to say, about 3 months. My boss would occasionally bring it up and say, we should look into this. We should look into this. But I was very much in that stress mode where I had the blinders on and like, I can't, Eric, I don't have time. I have 104 hours of email production to do or whatever. Like, I just have to get it done.
Yeah.
And then we had a nice little lull. And it seriously took me one afternoon. That's it. To set up LinkedIn Campaign Manager and Zoom and do a couple QA tests.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people it's really similar to using an app sign-on, like on your cell phone,
mm-hmm.
when you install an app and you're like, oh, I want to use my Facebook account to log in or my Google account. It's so much easier than you think it is to set up a lot of these integrations. Like people hear the word integration and they think custom coded API.
Right.
No, I'm not a back-end developer and I did this. And sometimes the troubleshooting is a little frustrating. Like, for example, my LinkedIn Campaign Manager app wasn't working a couple weeks ago. And it turned out my LinkedIn password had expired. That's it. I had to just log in to my profile on the app in our Eloqua instance, because it's not an instance where you can create like a dummy Eloqua user to use for the integration. You have to actually use your personal LinkedIn account. So just thinking through things like that, and usually the documentation will provide reasons why things aren't working. And then leverage free communities, Topliners, Email Geeks, Women of Email. Usually if you're having trouble with something, there's always somebody else having trouble too, or has in the past.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Eloqua being around longer than any other marketing automation platform besides like IBM, Unica, and Aprimo, which who uses those? It's mainly B2C companies, but it's few now. But there's always somebody who can help you. So thank you for being one of those people who is helping a lot of other marketers. Hopefully other Eloqua users on this call, you guys have found this helpful. Jen did pop her email address into the chat. Feel free to reach out to her. I'm going to follow up with this recording and some of these links as well. We obviously don't have time for spring cleaning. We're a minute over, so I'll be mindful of your time, everyone. Thank you for attending. Our next meeting will be the 3rd. It'll be June 17th. I had to look at my mini little calendar that's that tiny, but really appreciate everyone joining. Our people are trickling out right now. So have a great rest of your Thursday and weekend, and stay safe, everyone. And Jen, Tamina, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today and preparing as well.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You
Thanks,
bet.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.